This year's Steam Next Fest has come and gone, and I was surprised to see more than a zero amount of vehicular combat simulators, specifically the kind where you take control of giant robotic machines built for battle that resemble tanks but instead have legs. That's right, I am of course talking about mechs that do battle mechs even. I decided to download the demos of the games I thought either looked most intriguing or at least fit this description aptly, give them a solid try, and then put together this here video detailing my opinions. First up, and perhaps the least creative title of today's selection, is Robots Arena Fight. I sure hope that's a working title. I'm not too enthused about the AI-generated logo, cover art, or description, or the name itself, but the game itself shows some promise. The demo is a demo in the pure sense of the word. There's no options menu, no keybind layout, audio and video options can't be adjusted because they don't exist, and you are unable to change the controls. So you just have to kind of press all the buttons and figure out what does what. There's no escape menu either, so if you die or complete the mission, the only way I could find to get back to the main menu is to Alt F4 and relaunch the game. So it's clear that this is very early in development, but the bones are there. You can choose between one of two mechs, a light or a heavy I guess, and equip them with a handful of weapons. You've got the standard issue arsenal of lasers, autocannons, missiles. Slap whatever you want on there and hit go. I actually like the design of both these mechs. They retain the spirit of Battletech while of course remaining legally distinct. Anyway, we are launched into some basic terrain, and MWO veterans will feel right at home here because the exact same tank controls from that game are used here. Now I like to use throttle decay, but that's of course not an option here because there isn't an options menu. What tripped me up the most though is that when in reverse gear, the left and right buttons are inverted, meaning that they turn the mech in the opposite direction that they do during forward motion. I can't think of why it's set up like this because it's not a car, so you don't need inverted controls going backwards, and all it does is confuse me, so I would love for an option to turn that off. Anyway, the game feels pretty similar to MechWarrior in that it's got that simulator feel to it while still remaining a tad gamey. Most of the HUD is integrated into the dashboard, which I like, but then your own mech's paper doll is thrown way off to the top left hand side and it's very hard to see against the bright sky, so PGI please fix. It also took me way too long to figure out how to change my weapon groups. What you have to do is hold right click, move your mouse over to these dots, and then left click on the dot to assign the weapon to that group. A bit unintuitive because it's hard to remember that I have to hold down right click while moving my mouse around to click on physical buttons inside the cockpit well in the middle of combat. I appear to be only able to fire one group at a time before needing to manually switch to the next group, of which there are only 3. I think MechWarrior does it best in that it gives you 6 groups you can assign to a button, whereas here I can't. So I either have to alpha strike all the time or use the group chain fire mode, which still doesn't solve my problem. Combat is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of the laser sounds, but everything else sounds okay. Hit feedback isn't all that great either. I can for the most part tell when I'm being hit, but I can't tell by what and from where, other than hearing the other mech's weapons going off. But that of course only happens when they're close. One final note about the weapons. I think the missile lock needs to be better represented. As it is right now, you simply target an enemy and lock on is instant and automatic. I think. I'm not too sure. That's how it felt. So I think better lock-on feedback is required. Other than that, it's mostly serviceable. It isn't immediately clear what this bar represents. Turns out, that's my shields. And I don't know what the effect of the reactor depletion has, as when that hits 0, I can still fire my weapons, I still have full functionality of my mech, so I don't know. As previously mentioned, the mechs have shields, which is great, except it isn't obvious when I'm hitting a shield or the mech itself. Whereas when my shield gets hit, I can at least see it. Not very well, but I can see it. There's also no indication when a mech's shield has gone down, so I don't know if I'm hitting the shield or the mech itself, and personally, I think the paper doll needs to update way faster than it currently does. I want to see the result of each of my shots, not just a single update every couple of seconds.
Target destroyed. Objective complete.
The Betty voice, though, does provide some useful callouts, like for example when my shields are down or when my engine is critical, or when I've run out of ammo. But it doesn't tell me what weapon is out of ammo, so that can get a bit confusing in the heat of combat. The demo detected both my controller and, to my surprise, my joystick, but not my throttle. I was able to do most of the things I needed to do on gamepad, but of course it wasn't as good as mouse and keyboard. For example, trying to right click and regroup my weapons or press all the other buttons inside the cockpit was very difficult to do with a controller. But I don't think this game was made with a controller in mind. But you know, accessibility, something to consider I think. Now, of course, HOTAS support, a game like this would be perfect for that, but it's not at all functional yet, hopefully. Stick control was rather rudimentary. I was able to move the mech physically back and forth, left and right with the stick. I was able to fire weapon group 1, but that's about it. I couldn't torso twist, I couldn't really do anything else. So currently HOTAS support does, and I mean stick support basically doesn't exist. But it's a demo, so it's fine. All in all, I would say decent, rather promising. It definitely has that MechWarrior spirit, and I hope to see where it goes in the years to come. Just don't use AI to generate the marketing material. Next up is Scraps of the Machine. We start with a rather dystopian plotline, where corporate mining AIs have taken over their now abandoned facilities and continue to extract resources while being hostile to anything, or anyone, who enters what is now called the Artificial Zone. The game is in the title here, as your main objective is to traverse the Artificial Zone, harvest the scraps from the machines you defeat, use those scraps to upgrade your own machine, with the end goal of hunting down those AIs to put a stop to this whole thing. Gameplay is pretty simple. Controls are of standard FPS flavor with side strafing, dash, and limited jump jets. No independent torso twisting, but of course you don't need it because the game feels like an FPS, and your weapons can be destroyed. I don't think components have their own individual health. Instead, you have a big pool of health that can be restored by entering a mech bay that the game calls a bunker. The mech in the demo can equip 2 weapons, and later on in my playthrough I found a beam laser. It feels a lot like what I imagine Hawken used to feel like. I never played the original Hawken, but I did give Reborn a try, and this feels similar to that, in that it's not trying to be a simulator, but rather a fast-paced FPS mech game. Aside from it not really feeling like a mech game, I think my biggest critique is the rather weak level design and lack of a useful map. The parts of the map I were able to explore consisted of nothing more than a bunch of empty, soulless corridors and one semi-open area. Nothing really stands out, and it's all very dark. The map readout itself is useless because it shows me the shape of my space but not where I am inside it, so due to the terrain looking the same and resource and enemies respawning when I get far enough away, I quite often got lost and found myself revisiting areas I had already cleared over and over again. I'm fine with not having my hand held and not being told where to go, but some environmental direction would be beneficial. For the plan to release sometime this year, I'm hoping to see more story narrative mixed into the gameplay to keep me invested, as right now that doesn't seem to exist outside the intro storyboard. Maybe some lore details or a handler in my ear guiding me along as I progress through the campaign. Next on the Next Fest Mech Fest list, Drop Command. This one's got a lot of charm to it. So far it's well polished, it runs well, and the gameplay, while simple, is fun. You've got a bunch of mechs to choose from, and there are a lot of unique designs here. You can even pilot VTOLs and helicopters, so that's cool too. It shares a similarity to MechWarrior in that you've got mechs designed for specific doctrines of combat, but you have the customization to do whatever you want with the chassis. There's a campaign mode that sees you choosing your backstory before establishing your empire upon what I think is your home planet. There's a Civ style, or kind of like Stellaris, I guess, planet management system, where you can travel to the other planets and conduct peaceful negotiations. Or brutally take them over. I didn't get too far into it, but it seems really neat. Control of planets grants you access to spaceports and extra production facilities and stuff like that. There seems to be a lot of customization here to build your empire the way you want. You can recruit pilots you find on planets, and they can help you take on battles. And although their pathfinding is rough and they seem to get stuck quite a lot, they do tend to make quick work of adversaries. So at least they're capable. I think a bit of work needs to be done on the in-game UI though to more clearly give the player information. Targeting enemies close to my cursor was unreliable as well, as it seems the enemy needs to be inside my reticle or it doesn't work, which is impossible if the enemy is super tiny and also far away. The biggest gripe I have with Drop Command though is that the mouse movement feels way too floaty, like I'm using a trackball. I'll move my mouse, then stop, and the reticle on screen stops, but the mech keeps moving for a while before stopping. This trips me up a bit and it just doesn't feel very good, so I think replacing that with how mice normally feel is the way to go. The demo has no controller support at all, and that's a shame because I feel this game would pair well with a controller. Other than that, I quite enjoy Drop Command and will definitely keep my eye out for its eventual release. You should too. It felt the most feature complete of all the demos I tried. The last game on my Mech-fest list, and what has now become my personal favorite, is a Mech Warrior's fever dream. I'm not exaggerating this time. OVRLRD, or OVRLRD, is a highly ambitious and very promising mech combat simulator that takes all the great things about Mech Warrior and realifies it.
Online. Sensors online. Weapons system armed. All systems nominal. Welcome back. Operator, engine running.
It ships out of the box with native HOTAS and VR support, and even comes with a manual. Neat. 5 seconds in though, and it's clear this was not meant to be played with a measly mouse and keyboard. So I pull out the new flight stick I bought for Mech 5, charge up my Quest 2, spend the required 3 business days setting up all the controls, and now that I'm finally ready to give it a proper go, the result is almost euphoric. Oh no. Every switch serves a purpose, every button corresponds to an in-game action. The mech feels analog, requiring physical inputs to control the various systems within. Which is funny that I say it feels fine here, yet I disliked it in Robots Arena Fight. I think that's due to how much more interactive OVRLRD's dashboard is. Every button and switch does something important. The several displays scattered across the dash can be manually configured to show me different things. So naturally, the only correct course of action was to set up my cockpit to align with the HUD elements of Mech 5. God, I'm such a nerd. I can even set up the screens to play videos viewed through VLC. I'm not exactly sure why this feature exists, but the fact that it does is super cool. This opens up the possibility for incredibly immersive custom scenarios if you're dedicated enough to figure out the scenario editor, which I might just be. Tracking targets and aiming your weapons is tactile, more involved than simply moving a mouse or stick to line up a reticle on a target. It reminds me of Mech 3, where you had that secondary layer of control to manipulate the arm actuator separate from the torso motors. That same layer exists here. Not exactly sure how else to explain it, and I'm sorry if that sounds confusing, but basically, this feels like how I imagine a real mech would feel like to control if real mechs existed, where the targeting is a separate and additional system alongside the movement. Now, keep in mind, those words are being said with a HOTAS in mind, and to be fair, the flight stick is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But just this change alone adds a satisfying challenge to gunplay that rewards the player for proper practice. But what about the VR controls? Well, the entire game is playable with just 2 VR controllers, though it feels a bit weird, especially when manipulating the movement joysticks. I had some problems with the game not grabbing the sticks, which would render me unable to move my mech or fire my weapons. All very important things a pilot must be able to do at any moment's notice. There is a setting to toggle the sticks, but then I ran into the problem where I couldn't let go of the sticks. But I'm unsure if this is a VR issue or a game issue. I also feel rather limited with how few buttons the Quest controllers have. There are a lot of things to do in this game and I need buttons to press. Maybe the frame will help alleviate that problem. On that topic, just keep in mind that you'll need a VR headset with a high resolution, high level of clarity, and a generous sweet spot to make out all the details in the cockpit. Being able to clearly see things in your periphery is very important here, and my Quest 2 simply wasn't up to the task. As of right now, the game doesn't detect controllers at all, so if you want to play with one, you literally cannot. So it's just mouse and keyboard for you unless you have a flight stick. VR of course complicates things even more. Trying to go between VR and HOTAS controls on the fly is a bit of a nightmare. The game wants me to physically press all these buttons and switches. Now, make no mistake, I'm down bad for that, but I can't do it because my desk and monitors get in the way. I only found out after fighting with this for a while that there are options to basically automate the startup process, so I bound them all to my number keys and just hit them in sequence when the mission starts. Okay, easy peasy, but this doesn't solve the issue of all the displays being off. I still have to roll back my chair, reset my position, turn them all on, then roll forward, reset my position again, but suddenly my Quest has forgotten where the floor is, so when I recenter, I'm up too high and shifted to the right. Stupid headset. I do appreciate OVRLRD's complexity though. It makes the game feel more like a simulator and less like a game. And while it's important to note that once you get everything set up the way you want, jumping in and out is relatively quick, it does make the initial setup a lengthy pain in the ass. Perhaps some basic presets when auto-detecting new hardware might help solve a bit of that problem. So, now that we've got everything set up, how does the game actually feel to play? Pretty damn good, I've gotta say. Controlling the mech in combat is fantastic. There's a lot to do and a lot to keep in mind. It's much more involved than MechWarrior, but that's great because that's exactly what I would want from a game like this anyway. Weapon sounds are all pretty good except for the beam laser. And incoming fire is genuinely scary.
Your priority is intercepting those shells before they hit. Switch to your beam and remember to lock on.
And if it behooves you to know, not only can you go bowling, you can also perform deaths from above. I'm not so sold on the hit detection though. I can tell when small arms fire is hitting my mech, but it's not noticeable enough when tank shells or missiles hit me. Maybe a bit of cockpit shake or some fire explosions or something, just to make sure I know that I'm being hit by something. The paper doll readout could also be expanded to flash when a component gets hit, or somehow let me know when a weapon's been damaged. As of right now, it doesn't do those things, I don't think. And not that it really matters yet, but I would like to see some basic stats of the platforms, like how much armor they can carry, their maximum speed, stuff like that. There's only one assignable weapon button as well. Now, I understand this is probably realistic, but I would at least like two to make full use of the groupings. I have more than enough buttons on my flight stick to accommodate this. I also noticed there isn't a zoom out keybind for the targeting camera, so I just have to spam zoom until it cycles over, which can be problematic at times. Also, there's no target-friendly button, so I can't see how folked my friendly units are, but now I'm nitpicking a demo. So, all being said, OVRLRD is a fantastic mech combat simulator that already exhibits a high degree of potential. I enjoyed the demo so much, in fact, that I ended up buying the game during the summer sale, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. I've even decided to make a dedicated separate video about the game since I think it has that much potential. I can't wait to peer pressure my friends into buying it so we can co-op missions together. Oh, there's no multiplayer yet. Please make that a thing. Doing custom-made scenarios or the campaign itself with my friends would go so hard. This game would be perfect with co-op. And with that, the Steam Next Fest Mech-Fest has come to a close. There were a few other titles I've been keen on that didn't get Next Fest demos, mainly Engines of Destruction and Steel Bounty. Oh well, there's always next year. Perhaps they just weren't ready. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.